And as the country navigates through myriads of challenges, it has become increasingly evident that a comprehensive and strategic approach is necessary to address the burning issues that threaten to undermine its long-term prosperity. At the heart of these challenges lies the persistent struggle with low food inflation, slow growth, and widening fiscal deficit, among other related economic issues. The IMF has also stepped in to provide a comprehensive assessment and recommendations to address the country's pressing issues. But where are we with regards to the implementation of some of these reforms by government? I am being joined live from our Abuja studios by partner, senior economist, and SPM professionals, Mr. Paul Alaje. He starts the week with us on Business Nigeria. Good afternoon, Mr. Alaje, and it's good to have you on the show.
Good afternoon, and thank you so very much for having me, sir.
Mr. Paul, I think we should start from the reforms, which myself and you, we've talked about so many times without number, and fallout of these policies. But taking it away from what we've seen, government has come out to say these moves are necessary. I keep hanging on that, because many say if we had continued with the subsidy regime, maybe something else would have happened at the moment. And some even said if we had continued to manage the float, our exchange rate, we might have also had maybe a negative impact or fallout from that end. But at the end of the day, both of these policies have been instituted by this government. Where do we stand, and how do we manage the fallout?
Yeah, thank you once again. Clearly, subsidy regime subsidy has been removed to a large extent, even though there might still be some elements of subsidy right now. But what that has done to government, once subsidy was removed, was that government revenue increased significantly. And we saw that in 2024 budget, when government increased far beyond 50% revenue expectations. It reflected in the books of states. I'm talking of subnationals now. And we hope that the same will translate to the books among the local government and area councils in Nigeria. For flotation of Naira, that now serves as yeast that made the revenue window for government to further swell up. So all of these major policies, these two major policies among other policies, are significantly influenced revenue coming from the government. Now, it's another thing when you look at the national income accounting. In economics, we say, permit me to use the term, Y equals to C plus I plus G plus the difference between X minus M. And I will quickly break it down for listeners and those that are watching us across the globe. Y refers to the GDP or the income. We say equals to household consumption, equals to private investment, equals to government expenditure, plus the difference between export and import. Now, when you break that further down, you see that government expenditure, there's a component that is silenced in it, which is government revenue. Now, who is supposed to pay for subsidy and who is supposed to pay the difference in exchange rate was government. Technically, government have said, no, we will not continue to pay for this. Household and firm, we now have to pay. Because households and firm are paying, one, partly because they are not prepared, two, because opportunities for them to do that are slim, three, it also has implication on what they are buying. So what we have seen is that because household had significantly been forced to increase expenditure due to cost, and firm has also increased in terms of what they should be doing, what you have seen is that overall public savings, even though for government increase, private savings has reduced, and net income from abroad has also reduced. So all of these have implication on aggregate investment in Nigeria. And we have seen time for convergence. It seems to delay further when the subsidy removal and that of exchange rate, Naira devaluation, we have implication on the economy. But because there are no sufficient grounds, because we are dealing with a developing country, unlike when we are dealing with a more advanced country where variables can easily adjust. Now, because variable is not adjusting, rather than sending positive signal, they are translated to not too good signals. And this is what economics are bothered about when you make policies. we go and check those macroeconomic variables. And when we check the macroeconomic variable, microeconomic indicators, we check what the implication will be in terms of the objectives. One, which seems to concern all of us, is called inflation. The objective is low inflation at 2 to 3%. For Central Bank of Nigeria, it's 6 to 9%. For government, as of today, government is eyeing 20% or 26%. But what we have now is 33.94% or 95%, depending on the source. But generally, it's close to 34%, which means we're above global expectation, we're above central bank projection, but also above what fiscal authority submitted in 2020-24 budget. The second one is what is happening to GDP. GDP is expected to grow because inflation is anti-growth. It has taken part of the growth we should have because of price instability. So we have seen that rather than GDP, that's gross domestic product, grow significantly. The last report we got from the Bureau of Statistics was barely 2.98%, which means we are still growing relatively within the corridor of our population growth rate. So the growth is not significant enough. What should we be doing? What does economic envisage? We were expecting strong, sustainable, and sustained growth. Those are the three expectations in terms of objective of economic growth. What is the projection of Nigeria? 6 to 7%. The actual expectation of Global Organization for Nigeria is double-digit growth rate, but Nigeria is doing far less than that today. So when you look at unemployment, the Bureau of Statistics again says that unemployment figure is 5.2%, using 1 hour a week. And when you want to use 20 hours a week, then it will be seen 33.3%. Then you look at distribution of income, which is another key parameter. Distribution of income is expected to be fair. We have seen labor demanding for small salary at 250, federal government saying 62,000, state government saying 50,000. We don't know what local governments are saying. But as economists and as research organizations, we have recommended for both parties to look at 100,000 naira. Yes, that may have slight implication on inflation, but to also serve as to also propel the demand side because of what we have today. So today we are seeing more people cannot afford what they could have bought before because of increase in price of fuel, but also because of exchange rates in the reality that most of our products we consume are imported. Even some food are imported. So how do we energize labor to buy today? Because there is no equilibrium. We are currently going through a disequilibrium as we speak. I will anchor on this last point, which is exchange rate. What is happening to exchange rate? The goal of exchange rate is stability. And when we talk of stability, we expect that it is neither high nor low, but a place where we can predict. But we have seen in recent time, Naira oscillated from 1,000 to 1,900, 1,004, 1,003, 1,004, 1,005, 1,004. So it's not being really stable. And you could see excuses some organizations are giving for leaving Nigeria. They've complained about demand side because of high inflation. They've complained about exchange rate instability. All of these are macroeconomic variables. And the truth is that they all connect. If you bother about one and you don't bother about the other, one will induce the other, and rather than having overall positive growth, the one that is not taken care of will certainly be affected. And that will in the end, cause a major commotion for the entire macroeconomic variables, not just the one that has not been taken care of.
It's a good way to start this conversation, Mr. Laje. I must appreciate your breakdown. Well, now let's look at debt, which is also on the high side. Vis-a-vis minimum wage that we expect a figure anytime soon, or at least an agreed figure anytime soon. And also the plight of the private sector players when it has to do with this minimum wage saga. How do we put all of this together?
Well, I'll start with that. I'm really very worried. I did a paper and a publication in one of the private universities in Nigeria, here in Abuja. And when I ran the econometrics, it was revealed that external debt is currently affecting Nigeria negatively by 89%. That foreign loans. The reason why it's having that much, based on econometrics number, not my figures, the output, why it's affecting us that much is because of devaluation of Naira. You could check in recent time, we have added over 10 trillion naira to our debt profile without borrowing new monies. I saw the new report that we are now owing over 121 trillion naira as against over 70 trillion naira we were owing. Over 10 trillion, maybe 17 trillion of that money was not even borrowed at all. It was because we adjusted exchange rate now to 1,300 from what it was before. That was why what we are owing in foreign currency also increased. So as much as we are taking from one side, we might be losing from another side. And as you rightly mentioned in your report when you were starting this show this afternoon, the central bank had revealed that the debt is becoming a concern as they've shown consistent increase, not just in FX number, but also in Naira terms. So we need to find alternatives. So do I think debt has implication, huge implication on the economy? Because of our capacity to earn is narrow. And I'm happy that you dedicate the second part of this show to revenue generation such that the impact will not weigh people down, because ability to pay is one of the key principles when it comes to taxation. So I will leave that for my next colleague to have that robust conversation with you. So I will now look at the debt which you spoke about, and you also mentioned something else apart from that. I don't know if you can mention that again so that I can put a perspective to it, Mr. Tolu.
Minimum wage.
Yeah, minimum wage. Yes, yes. I've mentioned you were concerned about ability of private sector to pay. The law as of today is that anybody that has less than 25 people, that has less than 25 people in employment may not necessarily be affected. But let's look at it. How do we account for of a pipe? I want to go as rudimentary as possible, as elementary as possible. When you go to a steel market, whether in Port Harcourt or you go to a steel market in Abuja or Owode Oniri in Lagos, and you bought a pipe in Lagos or any of these markets for 600,000 in I think that was 2017. 600,000. The length is 12 meters, the diameter is 30 inches, and the thickness is 30 mm. If you want to buy the same thing today, it's 5 million naira. So what is accountable? When you look at inflation numbers, you look at exchange rate, it cannot account for that increase. It also means that because we know as economists that when there is high inflation, businessmen gain. They will want to gain money, the investment they've not even done. They will be envisaging further increase in prices. And as a result, they will start increasing their prices today. So that has nothing to do with government. It has to do with our people. So organization that is already selling sachet water 50 naira for small businesses. Organization that is selling sachet water from 10 naira, increase it to 25, now increase it to 50. And you are saying they cannot pay minimum wage. What is the payment, what is the component of wages in the entire expenditure of such small and medium scale organization? Because it can be a macro business, it can also be a mini business. But for medium and small, are we saying that they cannot pay or large organizations cannot pay? I completely don't agree with that. I don't agree with it. I also believe state government can pay. I believe government at all levels can pay minimum wage to labor. What we need to wrap up with is our revenue window. It's how we wrap up with our IGR. A lot of money to be collected. I give you an instance, I don't know whether it's your show or not your show, of a possible revenue of over 400 billion naira that a particular state was supposed to collect in revenue. Monies that practitioners have continued to operate within the state without paying. And this state is in the southwest, just to be specific. We had meetings, we showed them where the money was, but one way or the other, there is abracadabra along the line. The chief executive of the state is not even aware. But some of the appointees of government came and said, no, it is their money, they choose not to collect it, that they love the way they are not being paid. The monies. So in such a state that is losing close to 400 billion every year, you say they don't have money to pay? We're not just serious about it. What we do most of the time is continue to strangulate those few businesses that are paying taxes. Meanwhile, there are other sources of revenue that are called non-tax revenue that states and local governments can collect. And you see, until we become more serious, we're looking at alternative revenue window. We'll continue to put a lot of pressure on FIRS and state IRS for them to bring revenue. Meanwhile, the people are saying what they are even earning to date are not enough, even though those are not excuses. So we need to get serious and get to business when it comes to revenue window. Are we saying that Nigeria as a nation, not the people, is poor? The answer is no. So how do we get more revenue and redistribute the same for our people so that they can come out of poverty, hunger, and deprivation? So for me, organizations that have up to 25 can pay the amount that is in question. But if they are less than 25, of course, because of size, they may not necessarily be able to pay. Whether they pay or not, the truth is that they already increased their prices. They already increased their prices, whether they pay or not. So you see, the policies that we have made are not taking into account labor and a few other things. Already has caused a spiral inflation. Even if you don't pay labor, the spiral inflation is still there, but there is limit to it. And what our number showed us in our econometric laboratory is should not be beyond 100,000 and should not be less than 100,000. As a matter of fact, should not be beyond 115,000, but should not be less than 100,000. So if government is looking at a corridor of 100,000, it will have more positive impact than negative impact. Whatever decision we take, there will be some certain negative impact. But which one will be better according to utilitarianism? Is it more negative or more positive? That is why we recommend to government to consider an amount not less than 100,000 naira for labor, whether in private, whether in public, whether in state or at federal, or could it be a local government right now, this moment today.
Let's see how all of those calculations come up. We see how the figures also translate to government revenue and, of course, actualizing this decision of government, whichever way it comes out. We are expecting, we're all watching and seeing how that will play out. But before I let you go, Mr. Alaje, I'd like us to touch on the role of the monetary policy in all of this. Before now, we've had discussions around the role of the CBN in interventions and series of interventions we've seen before now, creative sector, agricultural space, dairy industry, pharmaceutical industry. We can go on and on. We had specific interventions for all of these segments of the Nigerian economy. But it seems like the Dr. Cardoso-led CBN is looking all the way around and trying to focus more on straightening monetary policy, focusing on how they can target and manage inflation. What's the difference between what we used to have and what we have at the moment?
Well, what I've seen, Mr. Cardoso, they see what they're trying to achieve, like you said, is inflation targeting. But what seems to be the difference here is that other parameters are influencing inflation. For instance, food inflation is completely out of its control. There's not so much. I've seen central bank increase NPR with unprecedented percentage, and it has not really achieved so much. Rather than inflation going down, inflation has been going up. Even in Bureau of Statistics today, but I believe in the integrity of the man at Bureau of Statistics. But let's assume another person, and the person says no, he does not want to report what the figure is. People's pocket will tell them inflation is increasing. The prices in the market will tell them the prices are getting worse. But thankfully, the administration at the Bureau of Statistics seems to report the number the way they are. So here is it. What should be the role of Mr. Cardoso? I think they need to start looking for convergence with fiscal authority. And that is why when National Assembly says they want to make a review within the activity of central bank, what I'm against is to keep central bank under the Ministry of Finance. There is no serious economics that will believe that. We don't want the independence of the monetary authority to be jeopardized or to be taken away from them. But at the same time, there must be collaboration. That effort between the fiscal authority and monetary authority must happen. And how will it happen? Government is looking at how do we support the people financially. But with this money going into the system, central bank on the other hand is saying, oh, there is excess liquidity. But government is saying we want to push more. Where is convergence in the two decisions that both institutions are taking simultaneously? As you are mopping up more money through CRR, through NPR, and all other method that is available to central bank, the fiscal authority are pushing the same money, without really creating any value, pushing it to the system. How do we then have that convergence? So that is why most of the time, and not just this administration, even with the previous administration, if you plot the inflation graph, which we have, you see it has consistently been on the rise because of no convergence of policy. One. Two, because of we have systematically neglected the supply side, and everybody seems to focus on the demand side. How do we curtail demand? How do we reduce money supply? How do we ensure that people don't just go because of too much money is chasing fewer goods? So if you curtail the money, that's the demand side. How do we boost production? How do we boost agriculture? The former central bank, I noticed what the administration did was to throw money, for instance, at rice farmers without measuring productivity. So if it is the same approach this central bank wants to do, it may still fail. What we should do is to measure productivity. So it may not be totally wrong for central bank to want to support some critical sector of the economy, but to throw money at them will be a total failure. So what should Mr. Cardoso do differently? If we must support the critical sector, it will be to go beyond just or merely supporting by doling money at them, hoping that things will change. What many of them will do is start buying not houses but estates in Abuja. Because they believe government money is free money. And they are not bothered the way you are bothered, the way I'm bothered, the way key government officials are bothered about what is happening to inflation, what is happening to poverty. They are not bothered. They believe it's their turn to take the money and disappear with it. But when we become serious with productivity, that is, for every 1 naira that leaves government covers, that goes in some of support, is it achieving the goal, the aim with which we set them to achieve? At that time, we'll start seeing difference. So look at this supply side on one hand, which seems to be hampered, which seems to be reducing. Two, non-convergence of policy between fiscal and trade. And I can also add even fiscal authority, trade, and monetary authority. No convergence. To my mind and what the numbers are saying. I'm not saying these people don't drink tea together. No. I'm not saying these people are not meeting. I'm not saying these people don't have single committee. No. But their policies are not converging. Number three is, if you must give to critical sector, you must follow the money. You must ensure productivity. There must be timelines. And it will not just be supporting, going through commercial bank alone. It must be an holistic measure. And we have to have a roadmap as to what we intend to achieve and measure those achievements. That way, you will start seeing the difference. This is what happened in Malaysia when the central bank of the country decided to support critical sector. They did not just give money to nobody. They ensured that they follow the productivity of why the monies were released. We can do the same in Nigeria. What it will take from us is to remove our jackets, to remove our babariga, to roll our sleeves, and ensure that the work is done. If we do the same, we will always get the same result. You know why? A lizard in Nigeria is not going to be an alligator in Malaysia. If it's a lizard, it's a lizard. If it's an alligator, it's an alligator. The work is in our hands. When we are ready to act, when we are ready to work, we will get the results.
Mr. Paul Alaje, it's always nice having you on the program, and thank you so much for starting this week with us. He's a partner, senior economist with SPM Professionals. I know the 50 minutes we have on this show won't be enough for us to discuss issues surrounding economy, fiscal side, and monetary side. But thanks for your contribution as usual, and do have a great week.